Good afternoon. The Senate Committee on Natural Resources will now come to order. Welcome to those in Carson City, online, and joining us by phone. Will our Secretary please proceed to call the roll?
Senator Brooks. Here. Senator Goycochea. Senator Hansen. Here. Senator Scheibel. Here. Chair Donate.
And I am here. Thank you. We have a few housekeeping items before we proceed. So members and presenters, please remember to mute your microphone when you are not speaking. And now that we are in the committee room, please mute any cell phones or any other electronic devices as well. For all individuals present in our meeting room, please always keep your face covering on and try to maintain social distance. And as you know, the legislative building has been closed to the public, but it is opening up gradually with the necessary safety precautions. So right now, it's in a hybrid between virtual and in-person participation. And as in previous sessions, all committee-related information can be found on the Nevada Electronic Legislative Information System, which is commonly referred to as NELIS, and that can be accessible from the legislature's website. There are four main ways that you can engage with our committee, and this includes registering to participate in a committee meeting through the NELIS system, submitting written testimony to the committee's email address listed on the agenda, sharing your opinion via the legislature's opinion application on NELIS, and of course, viewing committee meetings online through NELIS or on the legislature's YouTube channel. To testify on a bill or provide public comment during the 2021 legislative session, members of the public must first register for the meeting that you would like to participate in, and detailed instructions are available on the help page. If you are testifying in person, please note that only one person may be at the testifier's table at a time, and similar to previous sessions, testimony and public comment may be limited due to time constraints. When you're on the phone line, please pay attention to which bills are being considered on the agenda and follow the verbal prompts provided by BPS. And if you ever need any assistance with any of these processes, or if you'd like to receive an electronic notification of the committee's agenda and minutes, please contact our committee manager at the committee email listed on the agenda. Today, the committee will be doing one committee introduction for BDR. We'll be hearing three assembly bills, AB 146, AB 148, and AB 209. And of course, we'll be holding a work session on four bills, AB 31, AB 34, AB 74, and AB 75. At this time, I'll go ahead and start with the introduction of a committee BDR. So committee members, as you know, pursuant to Joint Standing Rule 14, a majority of the members of the committee must vote to introduce legislation on behalf of the committee. As noted in our Committee Rule 6, committee introductions may be for accommodation only, and it is not to be construed as approval of a measure. Joint Standing Rule 14 requires that certain measures be introduced by a standing committee, and among those measures are those requested by agencies and officers of the executive branch. BDR 511100 was requested by the Governor's Office of Finance to revise provisions related to agriculture, and with that, I'll take a motion to introduce BDR 51110 at this time. We have a motion to approve by Senator Brooks and seconded by Senator Vice Chair Scheibel. Any discussion on the motion? With that, will Secretary please proceed to call the roll?
Senator Brooks.
Yes.
Senator Goycochea. Yes. Senator Hansen.
Yes.
Senator Scheibel.
Yes.
Chair Donate.
And I am a yes. Thank you. Motion passes. All right. Let's go ahead, since we have everyone here at the same time, we're going to go and skip the bill hearings for now and move straight to the work session. I would like to remind everyone that we will not be taking any testimony at the work session. However, I may call on someone as necessary to answer questions from committee members. So let's start with Assembly Bill 31, which revises provisions governing the Nevada Petroleum Products Inspection Act. Our policy analyst, Jennifer Rudy, will be walking us through this work session. So Ms. Rudy, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Donate. This is Jennifer Rudy, Committee Policy Analyst. Assembly Bill 31 revises provisions governing the Nevada Petroleum Products Inspection Act. Specifically, the bill requires the State Board of Agriculture to adopt specification standards for aviation fuel, diesel exhaust fluid, and certain petroleum heating products. Makes it unlawful for any person to refuse to permit the state sealer of consumer equitability or the appointees thereof, or any member of the Nevada Highway Patrol to perform their duties concerning petroleum product or motor vehicle fuel sampling. Allows by mutual agreement for the waiver of the 24-hour notice period before an outlet or tank which has been sealed to be unsealed for purposes of removal of fuel or other product found to be in violation. Revises provisions relating to the storage and disposal of petroleum products. revises the powers and duties of the state sealer of consumer equitability relating to petroleum products, and makes other technical and conforming changes. There was one fiscal note, but it was from the Department of Agriculture and showed zero impact. And there were no amendments to be considered for this measure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rudy. Committee members, do we have any questions? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to do pass AB 31 at this time.
I move that we do pass. Oh,
We have a motion from Senator Brooks and a second from Senator Hansen. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the secretary please call the roll call vote?
Senator Brooks? Senator Goycochea? Senator Hansen? Senator Scheibel? Chair Donate?
Thank you, and I'm a yes. And motion carries, and I'll go ahead and take care of that floor statement. Next, we have Assembly Bill 34, which revises provisions governing the control of pests, noxious weeds, and pesticides. Ms. Rudy, please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Doñate. This is Jennifer Rudy, Committee Policy Analyst. Assembly Bill 34 revises various provisions governing the control of pests, noxious weeds, and pesticides. Specifically, the bill authorizes the Director of the State Department of Agriculture to adopt regulations that establish and administer a program to certify certain agricultural products as being free from propagative parts from which noxious weeds may grow, authorizes the department to provide certain notices by electronic mail, exempts a business from the requirement to obtain a license from the department if that business is licensed by another state, and sells nursery stock only to the public exclusively via the internet, revises the prohibition against engaging in certain activities involving pest control without a license, and revises provisions governing the certification of restricted use pesticide application. It further defines the term control as it applies to noxious weeds and makes various other changes concerning certification and regulation of pesticide applicators. There are no amendments for this measure, and there was one fiscal note from Department of Agriculture. Again, it was zero impact. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rudy. Do we have any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to do pass AB 34. We have a
So moved.
motion from Vice Chair Scheibel. Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Brooks. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Thank you, committee members, and if it's okay, I'll go ahead and assign it to Vice Chair Scheibel for this floor statement. Okay, AB 74, which revises provisions relating to pesticides. Ms. Rudy, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Doñate. This is Jennifer Rudy, Committee Policy Analyst. Assembly Bill 74 requires that sellers of restricted use pesticides maintain records of the distribution of those pesticides in addition to sales records. Also, the sales and distribution records must be maintained in accordance with federal record-keeping requirements for state certification plans. There are no amendments for this measure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rudy. Committee members, do we have any questions? Seeing none, I will go ahead and entertain a motion to do pass AB 74. We have a motion from Senator Brooks. Do we have a second?
Second.
And seconded by Vice Chair Scheibel. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. If it's okay, I'll go ahead and assign this to Senator Brooks for a floor statement. Great, thank you. And last but not least, we have AB 75, which revises provisions relating to weights and measures. Ms. Rudy, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Doñate. Jennifer Rudy, Committee Policy Analyst. Assembly Bill 75 requires the state sealer of consumer equitability to adopt regulations establishing field reference standards to be used in the installation, adjustment, repair, or calibration of devices for weights and measures, and weighing and measuring devices, and transfer standards to be used as temporary measurement references to check the accuracy of commercial weighing and measuring equipment. The bill also creates a rebuttable presumption concerning the presence of a field reference standard and makes various technical changes concerning weights and measures. There are no amendments for this measure. There was one fiscal note from the Department of Agriculture, and it was zero impact.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rudy. Committee members, any questions? Seeing none, I will go ahead and entertain a motion to do pass AB 75. We have a motion from Vice Chair Scheibel. Do we have a second? We have a second from Senator Brooks. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Please say nay. Motion carries. And I'll go ahead and take care of this floor statement as well. Great. So now that we have taken care of that and moved pretty quickly, we can proceed with opening it up for our bills today. So first, I'll go ahead and start with Assembly Bill 209, which prohibits the removal or disabling of the claws of a cat under certain circumstances. So welcome to Assemblywoman Martinez, who is here to present in person. And again, for anyone in the room today, just as a reminder that only one person is permitted at the testifiers table at a time due to social distancing. And I understand that you have other presenters as well, so I'll follow your guidance as to who presents after you, and please proceed when you are ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair Donate and members of the Senate Committee on Natural Resources. For the record, I'm Assemblywoman Susie Martinez, and I represent Assembly District 12. And I am pleased to present Assembly Bill 209 for your consideration. With the Chair's permission, I will share with you a PowerPoint presentation, which all of the committee members should have, and it's also available on Nellis. The purpose of AB 209 is to prohibit the declawing of cats unless it is for medical necessary reasons. Before I can talk about the bill, I think that it's important for the committee to understand what declawing really is. There's a misconception that declawing involves a simple surgery where the cat's nails are removed, which is to the equivalent of having your fingernails trimmed. The reality, however, includes a surgical amputation of the cat's paws to remove the claws of the animal, or the severance of the tendons to the limbs, paws, or toes to modify them in such a way that the claws cannot be extended. In other words, it's toe amputation. It would be to the equivalent to cutting off a finger at the first knuckle for a human being. This is excruciating pain that affects a cat's physical, emotional, and psychological well-being for the rest of their lives. To put it into perspective, this is what declawing looks like on a cat. On the left side is what it would look like on a human being. I think it's important for the committee to understand the implications and effects that declawing has on a cat. Again, it's not just a simple procedure. Cats who are declawed endure an incredible amount of pain that makes it difficult for them to walk, stretch, sit down, and even defend themselves against other animals. And that is why I'm proposing Assembly Bill 209. Assembly Bill 209 would prohibit the declawing of cats for cosmetic, aesthetic, or convenient reasons. There would be an exception if a licensed veterinarian determines that the procedure was necessary to address the physical medical condition of cats, such as an existing or reoccurring illness, infection, disease, or etc. In terms of the civil penalties, the first violation would be no more than $1,000, the second violation not more than $1,500, and the third and subsequent violation not more than $2,500. I talked about how declawing a cat can severely affect their physical, emotional, and psychological well-being. Opponents will argue that declawing a cat for cosmetic, aesthetic, or convenience reasons are necessary to protect human health, especially for immunocompromised people. There is no credible evidence that this is true. In fact, various federal agencies and organizations have advised against declawing cats to protect human health. Some of these organizations and agencies include the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the National Institutes of Health, and the American Association of Feline Practitioners. This does conclude my presentation, and I would now like to turn it over to the very dedicated and passionate Dr. Jennifer Conrad. She's the founder and director of the PAW Project, a national nonprofit organization that has done an incredible job in educating the public about the painful and crippling effects of cat declawing. Dr. Conrad, please proceed. we might be having some technical issues. So I guess we'll open ourselves up for some questions. I also have Jeff here with the Animal Humane Society with us as well. He can help us with some, if you guys have any questions as well. But I just wanted to just reiterate the reason why we don't want the cats to be declawed is we know the effects that it has on them. It changes their personalities. You know, one of the things is that people will get rid of their animals because they no longer will go to the bathroom in their cat box. The reason they stop doing it is because once they've been declawed, their paws are now in pain, so they will eventually end up going to the bathroom. Instead of digging in the cat box, they will step to the side and they'll pee or poop on your carpet or in your home, and then pet owners will no longer want the pet. So then that's when they end up in shelters. So this is one of the reasons why we want to ban the declawing so that we can keep the cats in their homes. Jeff, would you like to add anything else to our presentation?
Sure, I think.
Oh, there she is. There's Dr. Conrad. Dr. Conrad, hi. Thank you for joining us. Tag, you're it.
Dr. Conrad, I think you're having technical difficulties. They might be on mute.
Is that working?
Please proceed.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Martinez, and good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Conrad. I'm a veterinarian, and I run the world's largest organization dedicated to ending declawing, the PAW Project. I wanted to assure you that this bill is an excellent thing to do for animals in Nevada. The first thing I wanted to make sure that you know is that declawing is a misnomer, and that it's actually, when you declaw a cat, you're actually cutting off the last bone in a cat's toes. It's the equivalent of taking this cigar cutter and cutting off the tips of my fingers. And in regard to whether or not it's going to help the cats in Nevada, it will. Everywhere we've banned declawing, we've seen fewer cats end up in the shelters after the bans went into effect. And you might want to know why. And I believe it's because if someone is intolerant of a cat scratching the couch, they're really going to be intolerant of a cat not using the box or biting more, which are two well-known behavior problems caused by declawing. The cat doesn't use the box because it hurts to dig in the sand, and then they've been robbed of their primary defense, so now they have to resort to biting. The things that you might hear from the opponents is that you have to be able to declaw a cat to protect human health, and as Assemblymember Martinez said, the CDC and NIH and U.S. Public Health Service does not agree with that. And in fact, the rest of the world doesn't allow declawing, or most of the rest of the world. So, and you don't hear about people dying from cat scratches in England or in Germany or Switzerland or Sweden, Australia, all sorts of other countries where declawing is absolutely not allowed. You might hear that there have been all these advances in veterinary medicine, like using a laser to declaw, or that the pain meds are so much better now. And that's true, but it's still an amputation that's totally unnecessary. And as a veterinarian, I went to school to protect cats, not to protect couches. So thank you again for your time. I really encourage your aye vote.
Thank you so much for that short presentation. Assemblywoman, I think we're good to proceed with questions? Sure. Yep. Mr. Dixon, did you want to mention anything before we proceed with questions, or?
Yeah, I was good. I had some statements.
Please proceed.
Humane Society of the United States, can you hear me? No. Okay, good. I would like to thank Assemblymember Martinez for bringing this bill, and Dr. Conrad and the PAW Project for their punching above their weight, as it were, in getting this issue on the agenda in many places around the country. On behalf of our Nevada supporters and all cats in this state who, if given the choice, would keep their bodies intact, I'm sure, the Humane Society of the United States enthusiastically urges the enactment of AB 209. Nevada would be the second U.S. state to do so, but would join 7 Canadian provinces and 20 countries, from Ireland to Israel, Brazil to Belgium, Australia to Austria, and prohibit the non-therapeutic procedure colloquially known as declaw, but which has been shown by other presenters to really be an amputation. The term declaw, as we often encounter in the things that humans do to animals, is a euphemism. The medical after effects of declawing include pain, infection, tissue necrosis, lameness, back pain. Removing claws changes the way a cat's foot meets the ground and can cause pain similar to wearing an ill-fitting pair of shoes. There can also be a regrowth of improperly removed claws, nerve damage, and bone spurs. 1 in 5 cats have long-term complications from declaw surgery, while 50% have immediate post-surgical complications. 1/3 of declawed cats have some behavioral problems after declawing. So that's quite a few. The legality of non-therapeutic declaw sends the wrong message to pet owners that non-therapeutic amputations are an acceptable thing to do to one's animals. It puts some veterinarians as well in the position to either keep their customer, keep the cat with the customer, or decline the procedure. Veterinarians have an emotionally difficult job, especially veterinarians who care for companion animals, and this is a law that would spare them from that common dilemma. By prohibiting this practice, we send the message that humane solutions are the only way to address these natural behaviors that happen to inconvenience humans sometimes. Those solutions include trimming, nail caps, designated scratching services. I brought one with me. This was $7 at Walmart, and you can see my cat has gone to town on it. She's left my respectable cloth furniture alone. And there are a host of other solutions that one can find on the internet. There are many experts there. The scratching is usually a symptom of other things going on in the cat's mind. It's a sign of frustration, but there are humane solutions. And one can even use the funds that would go toward an operation to hiring a behavior specialist if one needs to consult on the issue. The continued legality of non-therapeutic declaw undermines the life-saving work represented by hundreds of thousands of work and volunteer hours and massive sums of public and donor money done by our animal welfare community in this state. Cats suffer from these procedures, psychologically and physically, and that often leads to behavior adaptations, maladaptations, that are even less tolerable to their humans than the ones it was initially intended to mitigate or prevent. If they make it to a shelter, they have a tough time getting out. Claws are part of the cat's essence. You cannot simply train their discomfort, their distress, and their defensiveness out of them. And I'll point you to a coalition letter of animal welfare organizations that are in support of this bill. They include Kathmandu of Carson City, Heaven Can Wait Animal Society of Las Vegas, Homeward Bound Cat Adoptions, Humane Network, Pal NV, Rescue Treasures, Cat Cafe, SPCA of Northern Nevada, and the Animal Foundation in Las Vegas. The Animal Foundation serves about 2/3 of Clark County. And in closing, if you pass this bill, the people on blood thinners will be fine. Immunocompromised people will be fine. Veterinarians will be fine. In some cases, they'll be relieved. The animal welfare community will benefit as one of the drivers of surrenders and euthanasias will be discontinued. And most of all, the animals will be spared the prospect of undergoing this life-altering and unnecessary procedure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dixon. Before we proceed to any questions from the committee members, the only thing that I would request is I'm having actually difficulty trying to find where some of the health organizations have advised against declawing of cats. I know that the CDC is probably the closest one that I've found, but I'm having tough time searching and finding those documents. If you can send those to us, that'd be really great. But
Be happy to.
any questions from the committee members at this time? Senator Brooks, and then Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if Assemblywoman Martinez mentioned this in her presentation, but do you know which states that this have made this medical procedure on a cat illegal?
Yes, Jeff Dixon, for the record, the state of New York just passed a law. We would be the second.
So the 50 states, one state, the state of New York, is the only one that's made this procedure illegal?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the U.S. is a little behind on this.
Thank you, sir. Senator Hansen.
Sure.
Thanks, Chair. Jeff, great to see you again. You mentioned in your thing about euphemisms. I couldn't help but laugh because, we use the term neutered for cutting off an animal's testicles, and we use spaying for removing the ovaries and uteruses of cats. You mentioned that we want to maintain their natural behaviors and their very essence, yet the natural behaviors that we aggressively, your organizations aggressively do, is to prevent something about as natural as you could get, which is reproduction.
Sure.
So I can't help but laugh at, on one hand, you guys are saying we need to neuter and spay and reduce animal populations, but then we do all these unnatural acts on them to prevent the most natural thing they do. So it just seems to me that we're kind of all over the place as far as consistency on that. And by the way, I'm a cat owner myself. I love cats. I had 4, but the damn coyotes eat them. Where I live, I'm always lose seriously. I have a hard time with that. I keep them because I have a lot of mice. But anyway, I'm just kind of wondering how do you reconcile the fact that on one hand we're cutting off all sorts of animal parts and doing all sorts of things to prevent them from reproducing, yet in this particular case you want to leave them all natural so they can have their essence.
Sure. Jeff Dixon for the record. So you're right. When we talk about sterilizing animals, we don't get too descriptive with it. But when we sterilize animals, pet animals, that is for the animal's benefit, right? Because if they continue to produce and produce, you contribute to animal homelessness. And animal homelessness often leads to lots of strays running around. They can be in danger, they can starve, they can be hit by cars, they can be subject to predations. So yes, that is we're talking about certain natural behaviors that we're taking from them, but in the one case, it's good for them as a whole, and in the other sense, it's bad for them.
Fair enough. I just want to see some level of consistency and all that. So, well, thank you for your presentation. I'm honestly in favor of doing anything stopping unnecessary procedures, but on this, I'm not sure if we're quite there yet. So, but we'll see. Thank you, Chair.
Sure.
Thank you, Senator Hansen. Vice Chair Scheibel.
Thanks. I'm not sure who can best help me out with this question, but I'm looking at Section 1, Subsection 1, and kind of wondering if this would apply to only veterinarians who perform this procedure or also the pet owner who directs them to do that or asks them to do that. Because I noticed that the wording says a person shall not remove or disable the clause, but doesn't say anything about directing somebody else to do it.
That might be a question for legal.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dixon. Mr. Alan Amburn, can you please chime in?
Thank you, Chair Janate. Alan Amburn for the record. So based on the plain meaning of the statute, person could similarly include an owner of the cat or a licensed veterinarian. Based on the plain meaning of the statute, it says shall not remove or disable the claws of a cat. That might narrow it to licensed veterinarian. Honestly, it's a bit unclear based on the language of the statute as it is currently written.
Okay, thank you. And I have a follow-up question then. I understand that for this particular act, there's a associated civil penalty, but would then, is the intention for this to be able to be used in a criminal case as well? Is the intention for it not to, or is it the intention to leave it up to the discretion of police officers and prosecutors to determine whether or not engaging in this, what would now be considered illegal activity, is also cruel or neglectful?
I'm going to pass that off to Mr. Horn.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is William Horn with Strategies 360, representing the PAW project. To answer Senator Scheibel's question, this bill is drafted to address the civil penalties only, not criminal, and arguably that this could go toward a veterinarian's license when they break this law, if this body tends to pass this bill. And the fines in there are directly to call to attention certain veterinarians who will continue to perform this procedure outside the parameters of being for the benefit of the feline. And so that's why you also have the staggered amounts in the fine. The fine should be such that it does not allow for a veterinarian to make that cost-benefit analysis that I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway in charge, and I'll just pay the fines out. So it's staggered. It increases with each time that does it, but there's no intent in this bill to cause for criminal prosecution of veterinarians. And LCB Legal can, correct me if I'm mistaken, but that's how I read the bill.
I would appreciate legal weight in here, and maybe if I can just be a little bit more specific. I'm looking at the definition of torture and cruelty, which is omission or neglect whereby unjustifiable physical pain is caused. And so it seems to me with this bill, we're saying that declawing a cat causes pain, and that pain is no longer legally justifiable. So by law, that to me would be torture or cruelty. And I'm wondering if there's any kind of safeguard in the bill to prevent the prosecution of veterinarians who engage in this practice under the criminal statute. Or maybe we do want to do that, but maybe that's not bad public policy.
Mr. Amber, did you want to chime in, or are you good?
Thank you, Chair Donate. Alan Ambrin for the record. So based on the language that is currently written in Section 1, so that sets forth the civil penalties that would apply in the situation. As stated, it sets forth those fine amounts in subsection 2. In subsection 3, that's where we start getting into the licensed veterinarians, and it essentially provides, not subsection 3, subsection 3 of section 1 talks about how a licensed veterinarian who violates the provisions of section 1, they're subject to disciplinary action pursuant to chapter 638. Those disciplinary actions could include the refusal to issue a license, revocation of a license, the suspension of a license, impositions of a fine, public reprimands, things along that lines. When it comes to the possibility of a criminal penalty coming into play with this, I'm currently unaware of any criminal penalties that would come into play for this. Looking at section 2 and section 3 of the bill, those are the ones that are showing where this language would be placed in existing statutes. So it would be placed in that subhead in chapter 574 dealing with cruelty to animals. I believe that would not have criminal penalties applied to that, but I can look into that further, Senator, if you would like.
Thank you. Yes, and I just think that it's important to have a clear legislative history on this topic, because I'm very supportive of the bill, and I think that we should be doing what we can to prevent this kind of harm to animals. And I just want to make sure that we're clear moving forward that the point of this bill is, first of all, to apply to veterinarians, not pet owners who take their cat to a veterinarian for this cruel, awful procedure. And second of all, that it's intended to be civil penalties, not criminal penalties. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Scheibel. And Mr. Horn, since you're already up here, just a quick clarification. This bill does not limit the scope of practice that a veterinarian would need to, in cases where perhaps it needs to declaw the cat to save the paw or whatever the case is. This does not limit that if that situation does arise, correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is correct. This is only limiting the scope. That it's basically a directive that veterinarians are not to do the declaw procedure unless it's for the health and welfare of the cat, not for aesthetic purposes. Owner brings the cat in and says, scratching up my furniture, need to get it declawed. That's not justifiable reason to declaw. But tumors, injuries, et cetera, that veterinarian is well within their practice scope to do this procedure.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Senator Hansen.
Thanks, Chair. Former Chair Horn, great to see you again. Majority Leader
Senator.
Horn. So, quick question on that. Who determines that? I mean, if I take my cat to a vet and I ask them to remove the claws, and you ask for a reason, and I say, well, because whatever, I make up something that has nothing to do with what's actually going on, and somehow the law enforcement people find out later, can that veterinarian be held accountable because he followed the dictation of his client without really doing an investigation on tumors or whatever the actual legitimate things would be if this bill passes?
Thank you, Senator Hansen. I believe that it's incumbent upon the licensed veterinarian to do their profession, their due diligence, for any procedure that an owner of a pet animal they bring into. So I would hope that a veterinarian is not going to take my word or diagnosis of my cat as in place of their own and making a determination. So if I give them some false reason on why I need the cat declawed, I think it's still incumbent upon a licensed veterinarian to, look at my cat, check it out, and see if my subjective complaints on the cat are accurate. And that veterinarian, if they're, honest and doing their practice as they're supposed to, will say, well, Mr. Horn, I don't see these problems with your cat. There's nothing wrong with her. I can't do this procedure unless I find something objectively that warrants this procedure. And and we would hope that not just with veterinarians, but other healthcare providers, et cetera, or people who are doing service. You want that expert to be honest and do the job within the scope that they are licensed to do.
Well, I guess the question would be then, assume, we see this in medical practices all the time where people will abuse that type of discretion. Who enforces it in this case if a veterinarian, cuts off my cat's claws and in somebody else's opinion, my cat's it wasn't legitimately done? Who under this law, if it passes, is this something that the local sheriff enforces or the veterinarian's board or what? I'm not sure who the enforcement mechanism is.
Well, currently in our statutes and regulations, licensing boards are the ones who oversee conduct of their licensees. And so is there a mechanism to where, somebody can report this practice? Yeah, anyone can report any veterinarian or any licensee for operating outside the scope of their license. And then that board is tasked with the investigation and checking to see if whether those complaints are warranted, and they can operate from there.
Okay, very, very good. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Horn. Let's go ahead and seeing that we are good to go. Chair Brooks, Senator Brooks.
Thank you, Chair. I have one more question. So it just kind of a quick search shows that this exact measure has failed in California, Florida, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Michigan, and that's just the first ones I'm thinking, in the last 2 years. So what, it seems as if it's very difficult to get these passed, even in states that pass all kinds of stuff. So why is this movement having such a hard time getting traction? No pun intended.
For Senator Brooks, I could only speculate, maybe others have a better reason on why, but I would point to the successes, not just in New York, but also some municipalities in the country that have moved in this direction. And I believe a number of provinces in our neighbor Canada have also done it. So it's not so much as who hasn't done it, but it's that there's this effort, and it has been succeeding in other places to get this practice abolished. And while Nevada, I grew up here, this is my home, sometimes it's okay for us to be out front trendsetters and doing the right thing. And I believe that this is one of those times. And as more states come online and recognizing that this practice is unwarranted, I think others will eventually follow suit. And so we don't have to be the last state to do it. I think we can be first, or one of the first.
Good, thank you so much. All right, let's go ahead and proceed to testimony. As a reminder, we'll be limiting all testifiers to 2 minutes each, and testifiers are encouraged to summarize their positions and submit more comprehensive testimony in writing. And I say that clearly to all those that are on the phone line, so please limit your testimony to 2 minutes each. Otherwise, I will cut you off, and it's okay to say ditto after the next person. So before we proceed to the phone lines, is there anyone wishing to support testimony for AB 209 here in person in the room? Seeing none, let's go ahead and go to the phone lines. BPS, is there anyone on the line wishing to provide testimony in support for AB 209?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support on Assembly Bill 209, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 679. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
My name is Jill, Jill, Dobbs, D as in dog, O, B as in boy, B as in boy, S as in Sam. I am the Executive Director of the SPCA of Northern Nevada. I am speaking today in support of all the prior speakers in support of this bill, as well as the 69 letters of support submitted to the previous Senate committee in support. Vet associations are either completely opposed to this procedure or they strongly recommend against it. Scratching, as we've already heard, is a necessary and natural cat behavior. Plenty of appropriate ways to address it, as explained by Jeff Dixon. Declawed cats are often relinquished into our shelters because of long-term negative physical and psychological effects, including arthritis, chronic lifelong pain, refusal to use the litter boxes, but they can't live as outdoor cats because they don't have claws to defend themselves and climb things to get away from predators. Please read all the support letters detailing the chronic pain and problems. We currently have a cat, as we have dozens of them relinquished to us every single year because of the long-term effects of being declawed. It's really hard to get cats who won't use their litter boxes adopted into loving homes. We have even had ones where the declawing is botched or so severe that it causes horrible pain and suffering. We had a cat, Gracie, last year. She would roll onto her back or side. She could barely even walk because of the pain caused by a declawing surgery. If a person has a health issue, then they can adopt a social cat. They can clip their nails. They can use nail caps, scratchers in every shape, size, and budget, or not own a cat. It's not acceptable to make a cat suffer lifelong pain for human convenience. I thank you very much for your consideration, and I hope that you vote in support of this very important ban.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 078. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, my name is Francesca Fulciniti. That's Francesca Fulciniti. And I'm providing testimony as Executive Director at Heaven Can Wait Animal Society, a Las Vegas-based nonprofit that serves animals and their families. And I'm speaking in enthusiastic support of AB 209. For the past 20 years, Heaven Can Wait has worked towards ending euthanasia in the Las Vegas area through providing life-saving spay and neuter services, as well as high-impact adoption and foster programming. And since our founding, we've served over 150,000 animals here in Las Vegas. We perform dozens of surgeries every day, and it's not something we take lightly. There is risk associated with each and every surgical procedure, and we carefully evaluate each patient to ensure that the benefits of the surgery outweigh these risks. We know, for example, that the benefits associated with a spay or neuter surgery have a dramatic positive impact on the quality of life for the individual animals that we serve, as well as for the future generations of animals that are born here in Las Vegas. With that in mind, we view declawing in most circumstances as an unnecessary, painful procedure with the potential for chronic medical issues and behavioral problems for cats who receive this surgery. We believe there are few situations in which the risks of this surgical procedure outweigh the benefits. We never recommend declawing as a possible solution to any of our clients when they come to us with questions for addressing a cat's behavioral issues. With many negative unintended consequences possible from declawing that have already been outlined in this hearing, we see that it also puts cats at increased risk for abandonment or surrender to our local shelters. This is bad for our community, for our local shelter and rescue partners, and for our efforts to end senseless euthanasia here in Las Vegas. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Caller with the last three digits, 886. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
My name is Alex Noriega, A-L-E-X, N as in Nancy, O-R-I-E-G-A. I have fostered dozens of kittens for shelters such as the NSPCA, Lead Animal Shelter, and Hearts Alive Rescue. I'm just here to say that cats absolutely need their claws. As stated with the other presenters, this is not a necessary surgery, and it does include or does lead to complications in the long run. I heard one senator say that we're not quite there yet, and I believe that is such a backwards way of thinking. And I'm sure that this is having a hard time getting traction in other states because vets are lobbying our politicians and getting in their pockets. So no, we will never get there if we aren't caring for the greater good and thinking of what's best in the long run for these animals.
Caller with the last three digits, 794. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Barbara Hodges, B-A-R-B-A-R-A-H-O-D-G-E-S, a veterinarian working exclusively with companion cat and dog patients for the past 20 years. Today, I represent the Humane Society Veterinary Medical Association with 9,000 members nationwide, including 100 members in Nevada. We strongly support AB 209, which would end non-therapeutic toe amputation surgeries on cats. Contrary to widely held belief, declawing is not simply removal of a cat's nails. Declawing involves amputating the last bone of each of a cat's toes. It is an unnecessary surgery, generally performed to address convenience issues such as scratching household furniture. It offers no medical benefit to our family cat patients, and it may have a lasting negative impact on their health and welfare, exposing them to risks of anesthesia, infection, and blood loss, as well as chronic pain, nerve damage, and lameness. Many veterinarians already refuse to declaw on ethical grounds, citing it as an inhumane, invasive surgery. In fact, declawing of cats is not fully condoned by any veterinary medical association. Declawing has already been prohibited in dozens of countries worldwide, as well as by 11 U.S. cities, including just this March, Austin, Texas. The first bill to prohibit convenience declawing statewide was signed in New York in 2019. By enacting AB 209, Nevada would become the second state in the nation to prohibit this inhumane procedure, and we urge your humane leadership in supporting this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. BPS, before we continue, I just want to share really quickly to anyone who is calling to testify in support or in opposition. I recognize that this can be a very tough issue and an emotional one for us to talk about, but I just please ask that we remain respectful of the committee members and of the other callers as we proceed. So, BPS, please continue.
Thank you so much, Chair. Caller with the last three digits, 613. Please go ahead and unmute again using *6. Thank you so much. Caller with the last three digits, 613. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Rebecca Goff, R-E-B-E, C as in cat, C as in cat, A, G as in girl, O, F as in Frank, F as in Frank. And I'm speaking in support of AB 209 on behalf of the Nevada Humane Society, our state's only open admission and no-kill shelter. I'm the clinic manager there and have worked in veterinary medicine for over a decade and have seen this inhumane procedure for too long. Declawing leaves cats with long-term post-surgical and physical and mental trauma, as well as behavior issues such as biting and inappropriate elimination. This leads many of these cats to be surrendered to a local shelter like us. We currently have a cat in our care who is one of the 63% of cats who have painful bone fragments left behind after surgery. He was surrendered to us due to behavior issues, and while in our care, we discovered the bone fragments as well as his nails growing back through his skin of his declawed paws. I can't imagine how painful that would be to live like that. And now he faces another complicated and expensive surgery to correct this error and rehabilitate him so he can have a chance at a comfortable life. We thank the maker of this bill for bringing this important issue to light, and we strongly encourage this committee to pass AB 209 and make Nevada a better place for cats and the people who love them. Thank you.
Thank you. We are currently in support testimony on Assembly Bill 209. If you have recently joined the call and would like to testify in support, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no additional callers in support at this time.
Thank you so much, BPS. Next, we will go ahead and hear testimony in opposition. Do we have anyone in the room? Seeing none, let's go ahead. BPS, is there anyone on the line wishing to provide testimony in opposition to AB 209?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in opposition on Assembly Bill 209, please press *9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much, BPS. And last but not least, is there anyone in this room willing to testify in neutral on this bill? Seeing none, BPS, is there anyone on the line wishing to provide testimony in neutral on AB 209?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 209, please press *9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you so much, BPS. Assemblywoman Martinez, do you have any closing remarks?
Thank you, Chair Donate. Senator Brooks, I just wanted to give you a little information now that I can give it to you. There have been more counties in the United States that have also banned the declawing. I will get you that information. I didn't bring it with me, but we do have it. So New York has been the most progressive that has done this. We're hoping to be the second. When I started doing this on this journey of the cat bill, many people told me, you know what, Susie, don't do it. The lobby corps, you're never going to get anywhere. But I knew that speaking to everybody, educating everybody, I knew that the Assembly and the Senate were sensible people. We passed it in the Assembly. We're now hoping to pass it in the Senate. We've educated people, and they realize that this is not a good policy. Back in the day, we used to have the chickens in little boxes. Now we want them to be free range. People are willing to spend $6 for a dozen of eggs because we know that, it's better for the animals. So now we also, when we know better, we do better. So yeah, in California, my understanding is they haven't been able to pass because their lobby corps is so strong, it's not going to pass. But I know that that's not the case here. But so anyways, I just wanted to conclude. Thank you very much for allowing me to present. Another thing is that I know sometimes we become partisan in this building. I just wanted to share a really quick letter that I got from somebody. It's I'm going to put this in my office. But this is from a Nevadan. Her name is Lev Schneiderman. She says to me, as a conservative Republican, I very rarely compliment Democratic representatives. She says, your AB 209, which bans the declining of cats, deserves a big thank you from all sane cat lovers. My 2 feline family members, Frankie and Johnny, also extend their gratitude. So the cats don't care whether we're Democrat or Republican. They just want to keep their paws. So, committee, thank you for the privilege of your time. And thank you for allowing me to present Assembly Bill 209. And I urge your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Assemblywoman Martinez. It's always great to welcome you here. And I just want to remind everyone that I'll go ahead and close the hearing on AB 209 for now. And the committee will not be taking any action on this bill today, but it may bring it back for a future work session. So thank you again to all the presenters for your testimonies and participation. Okay, let's go ahead and go back to the beginning of our agenda. We are going to start with Assembly Bill 146. This measure revises provisions relating to water. We have Assemblywoman Peters with us today to present in person, so please proceed when you are ready.
Thank you, Chair Doñate and the Senate Committee on Natural Resources. For the record, I'm Sarah Peters, representing Assembly District 24 in Washoe County. It is my pleasure to present Assembly Bill 146, which revises provisions related to water pollution, especially water pollution resulting from diffuse sources. As you know, Nevada is the most arid state in the nation. As such, water is our state's most precious resource, and protecting its quality is of profound importance. We all depend on water from everything from drinking water to irrigation for agriculture, economic development, and recreational use. It is of utmost importance to protect our water, and one of the biggest threats to our to our limited water resources is pollution. When we think about water pollution, often the images come to mind of like large pipes that are exploding green gunk and dumping waste into our rivers. That's called point source pollution. However, the leading cause of water quality impairments in Nevada is not from these single source pollutants, but rather from pollutants called diffuse sources, or from diffuse sources. These are also known as non-point source pollution. This type of water pollution is generally caused by runoff, precipitation, drainage, or atmospheric deposition. Often, snow melt or rainfall carries various pollutants like chemicals, bacteria, fertilizer, and sediments through the ground to our groundwater and into our lakes and rivers. These pollutants can stem from agricultural production through excessive use of herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers, but are also related to acid drainage from abandoned mine operations. There can also be runoff from urban areas, including development, clearing of large swatches of land. Faulty septic systems can also result in these pollutants into our waterways. Landscaping fertilizer, which we all know, some often related to golf courses, and improper disposal of pet waste or toxic chemicals. Additionally, air pollution can play a major part in the creation of acid rain, and exhaust fumes combined with water in the atmosphere have been known to cause toxins. Diffuse source pollution is not the only main source of water pollution in Nevada, but it is a leading cause of water pollution across the nation. Assembly Bill 146 authorizes the State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources to develop plans, recommendations, and policies to manage, control, and mitigate water pollution from diffuse sources in Nevada. The bill requires the State Environmental Commission to adopt regulations for controlling the infiltration of contaminants into underground water resulting from contaminated fluids or soil. If the underground water supplies or may be reasonably expected to supply a public water system. Assembly Bill 146 requires the commission, the Environmental Commission, to publish notice of a hearing on a regulation that provides a standard of water quality or waste discharge in addition to in a newspaper in a digital format that is generally accessible in the area and to any community impacted. We all know that oftentimes something published in the newspaper doesn't necessarily make it in front of our eyes anymore. The bill also requires the Commission to consider any disproportionate impacts on underserved communities when adopting regulations, standards of water quality, and effluent limitations. The bill codifies the practice of informing and consulting with Native American tribes during regulatory and permitting consideration concerning water pollution. Finally, AB 146 sets forth a legislative declaration that the people of Nevada have a right to clean water, and that is the policy of this state to mitigate the degradation of waters in Nevada. I think you have all been supplied with a conceptual amendment that if you would entertain, I could go through today. This amendment is a product of continued work with concerned stakeholders, primarily our local water managers. On the sections proposed for modification in the conceptual amendment, you should all have amendments to Section 4 and Section 6. Changes in Section 4, Sub 1D proposes to move the adoption of regulations out from the mandate and give discretionary authority to the Environmental Commission for the development of these regulations for groundwater contaminants. Additionally, there were concerns regarding the input of local municipalities in the regulatory development process. So we included an additional and specific public hearing for the Environmental Commission to assess the three specific concerns of economic and technological feasibility of meeting the proposed regulatory standards and the cost of implementation of those on the local governments. Changes in Section 4, Sub 7 proposes to add definitions under the marginalized community definitions to be in line with use in other statutes. Changes in Section 6 propose to add a subsection to give discretionary authority for the director to provide recommendations on the adoption of regulations to the Environmental Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to present AB 146. I am available for questions as they come. Sorry, I had swallowed a piece of my lunch wrong, and it's making it very hard for me to breathe.
All good. So thank you so much for that presentation. And just for the committee members, just wanted to clarify for you all that we do have Ms. Jennifer Carr from the Division of Environmental Protection in the State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources available also for questions if you'd like to ask anything from them. And I believe there are a couple amendments besides the one that's presented that are uploaded on Ellis, but for now we can ask any questions to the Assemblywoman while she's here. So committee members, any questions at this time? Looks like Senator Brooks.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to find the amendments that we're talking about.
So if you go on Nellis, on AB 146, and you look at the exhibits, under Senate and Natural Resources, Tuesday, May 4th, 2021, there are 4 documents that were uploaded as exhibits under the Senate. There's one that says email amendment removed fiscal impact. Next one says conceptual amendment urban consortium, which we'll hear about probably later on in this hearing.
I see those, but
Yeah.
Assemblywoman Peters, you were just walking through the conceptual amendment that you're proposing. It doesn't do the things that you said it was doing, or at least I'm looking at the wrong thing. And so it's a one-page amendment, right? Yeah. It is under exhibits. I do see that, but I just thought maybe there was a different one because where is the piece in your amendment that talks about the, what'd you say, marginalized communities?
Yes, so point 2 on here says it revises section 7, section 4, sub 7, and excuse me, Assemblywoman Peters for the record, to add the following definitions. And this was recommended by legal. Right now, we have marginalized communities defined in the text of the first reprint. These are additional definitions that would be added as supporting definitions because we realized that census tract has kind of specific designations related to these block group, and census tract definitions on the amendment.
Okay, so section 2, or so point 2 on your proposed amendment is revising that portion of the bill that defines marginalized communities, and this is just additional clarity to that?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Senator Brooks, Vice Chair Scheibel?
Thank you. That brought up a follow-up question. Is it marginalized communities or underserved communities? I'm on page 6 of the most recent reprint of the bill.
Thank you for that correction. It is underserved communities. In our initial version, we used marginalized communities and found a better definition defined in a different piece of legislation that was presented this session, and we adopted those language because they were more specific and easier to follow and to hold accountable for regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Senator Goicoechea?
Thank you. It probably would have been a better question from Senator Brooks, but I'm just trying to get my hands around this whole thing. All right, when you talk about the director in your amendment, are you talking about the director from DCNR?
Sarah Peters, for the record, correct.
Okay, and I guess I'm struggling with what kind of recommendations he would be able to submit to the commission, where truly the commission is a regulator. Can you enlighten me there exactly where we're headed?
So Assemblywoman Peters, for the record, in the original draft, we authorized the director to take actions related to the mitigation of and control of diffuse source or contaminated water input to water basins. We had significant concerns about the discretion from that one person. So the objective was to allow for that discretion to occur, because sometimes when you're on the ground and in the division, you are seeing activities that cause concern about your ability to control certain contaminants or certain actions that are resulting in degradation to waters. And this was to enhance kind of that narrative and discussion pathway from the director's office to the Environmental Commission to offer suggestions and recommendations for on-the-ground activities that would help control those pollutants.
And just to follow up, if I may, then, Mr. Chair, and I'm still, again, trying to wrap my head around the bill as I read it, but anyway, clearly we know that when we talk about impacts from residential individual systems, I mean, septic. Okay, the bottom line, I don't, I like to talk plainly. All right, septic system. We know that's occurring across a lot of areas in this state. We've got wellhead protection programs in most groundwater basins where there is a community. So we're going to have the State Environmental Commission is going to walk through this, and then they're going to say, okay, we're going to adopt some regulations, and truly, if we've got high nitrates, then we're going to have the Health Commission, the State Board of Health, adopt some more regulations. So I'm trying to figure out what the solution is. We're going to put a commission in place, we're going to adopt some regulations, but the solution, how are we going to deal with these, septic systems?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. Sorry, I was really close to that mic. Assemblywoman Peters, for the record. So yes, there are two kind of pathways, right? The obvious pathway for pollutants into our water systems is septic or sewage waste that gets into our water basins. And there's an engineered process that goes into designing those, right? With that includes modeling and identifying whether there will be impacts to water quality in those basins. That's a different regulatory process than what we're proposing here. This doesn't necessarily have to do with septic systems. It is kind of a broader picture of the potential contaminants that can result in degradation to our groundwaters. Right now, the DCNR through NDEP regulates injection fluids into groundwaters, but they don't regulate infiltration through wastewater basins or other areas that's as contiguous in looking at the contaminants directly from those infiltration waters into our groundwater supply. There are anti-degradation rules that are in place that the state uses to monitor and ensure that the basins are not, that our groundwater basins are not seeing a degradation in water quality. But that's not what we're looking at getting at here. This is more of a direct control of those contaminants into the groundwater. As you can see, I'm sorry, I wanted to point this out to you, Senator. Section 4, sub D, Section 4, sub 2 adds language that says the regulations adopted by the commission must address without limitation sewage treatment and effluent and disposal. So yes, that would be in, actually, I would like to ask, because I think that that NDP has talked to the Department of Health and Human Services about this kind of nexus with public health and this piece. So I don't know if Ms. Carr would be available and want to discuss how they kind of foresee this piece working out.
Ms. Carr, if you can please proceed.
Good afternoon, Jennifer Carr for the record, NDEP Deputy Administrator. Thank you, Senator Goicoechea, for your questions regarding septic systems. There is a link in the programs regulating septic systems because NDEP regulates commercial septic systems, and the Department of Health and Human Services and the State Board of Health regulate residential septic systems. So work that we would do as a result of this bill would be in cooperation with the Board of Health, the State Environmental Commission, and the staff of the Department of Health and Human Services.
Thank you, Ms. Carr. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator, I'm sorry, I would also like to point out, this is Assemblywoman Peters for the record, that this was a section that we proposed to change. So pulling this piece sub D out from under the commission shall adopt and replacing it with another subsection 2 that the commission may adopt. So this doesn't require the commission to adopt these regulations. It allows them to adopt these regulations in the future.
Now, where is that in the amendment, Assemblywoman? Or it's something you're proposing?
That would be the first point in the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Got it now.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm not very techy, but I appreciate your help. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Goicoechea. Any other questions from the committee members? I don't see any. All right, let's go ahead and proceed to testimony. So as a reminder, testifiers are limited to 2 minutes each, and they're encouraged to summarize their positions and submit more comprehensive testimony in writing. Is there anyone in this room that would like to provide support testimony at this time for AB 146? I don't see none, so let's go ahead and proceed to going to the phone line. So BPS, is there anyone on the line wishing to provide support for AB 146?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support on Assembly Bill 146, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 632, please press star 6 to unmute. Thank you, caller. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
For the record, this is Paul Selberg, Paul, S as in Sam, EL, B as in boy, ERG. As the driest state in the nation, Nevadans place a high value on our water resources. The state has a responsibility to protect the quality of Nevada's water to ensure that all Nevadans have clean water to drink now and in the future. According to the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection, non-point source pollution is the leading cause of water quality impairments in Nevada. Yet the state currently does not have all the tools it needs to address this source of pollution. AB 146 attempts to give our state agencies the tools they need to manage non-point source pollution and protect and improve water quality. AB 146 would also require the State Environmental Commission to consider any disproportionate impact on historically oppressed or marginalized communities when adopting water quality regulations. This would help ensure that water quality benefits and improvements are shared by all Nevadans and that no community is unfairly subjected to higher pollution levels or lower water quality. People and communities across Nevada benefit from having clean water to drink. Surface water accounts for about 60% of the state's water supply. Reducing pollution from non-point sources would improve water quality across the state, resulting in cleaner drinking water, lower water treatment costs, and safer water for outdoor recreation activities. We'd like to thank Assemblywoman Sarah Peters for bringing this important legislation forward, and we urge the committee's support. Thank you for your time.
Once again, we are currently in support testimony on Assembly Bill 146. If you have joined the call and would like to testify in support, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no additional callers in support at this time.
Thank you so much, BPS. Next, we'll go ahead and hear testimony in opposition. Is there anyone in the room wishing to provide testimony in opposition? Seeing none, let's go ahead and proceed to the phone lines on anyone wishing to provide testimony in opposition to AB 146.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in opposition on Assembly Bill 146, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 948, please press star 6 to unmute. Thank you, caller. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Donate, esteemed members of the committee. For the record, David Cherry, spelled David Cherry, and I'm Government Affairs Manager for the City of Henderson. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on AB 146, and I want to thank both the bill sponsor and Chair Donate for taking time to meet with me prior to today's hearing. The City of Henderson's Department of Utility Services is proud to be Nevada's first utility-only agency to receive accreditation from the American Public Works Association, which we view as a testament to the city's commitment to providing the highest caliber of water and wastewater services to our residential and business users, while also protecting the environment, encouraging conservation, and safeguarding public health. While we appreciate the many changes that Assemblywoman Peters has made to her bill since it was introduced and believe that the conceptual amendment before you today is another step in the right direction, we believe that the bill would be further strengthened by the inclusion of a mandatory requirement for a technical advisory committee or some other type of regulatory working group that includes city governments like Henderson to ensure that the municipal perspective is considered when regulatory actions are taken that create new compliance standards or that could affect the rates of consumers in our community or the reliability of the services we provide. We are hopeful that the bill sponsor may still be willing to incorporate this requirement into AB 146 as we requested prior to today's hearing in the form of an amendment proposed by the Urban Consortium of which we are a member. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to share this testimony with you today.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 642. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, this is Randy Robinson on behalf of the City of Las Vegas. That's RANDYROBISON. We thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I'm appearing in the opposition position, consistent with the committee rules. I think we very much appreciate the work that the sponsor has allowed us to work on with her. We appreciate the amendments that she has made and her willingness to consider our perspective. I would align myself with the comments from the City of Henderson about the Technical Advisory Committee or some other working group that would help not only bring that perspective to the regulatory process, but also help us in determining the kinds of costs that may result and need to be accounted for in some of those regulations. So again, thank you to the sponsor for her work on the amendment, and again, we're hoping that maybe there's a little bit more work to do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We are currently in opposition testimony on Assembly Bill 146. If you have joined the call and would like to testify in opposition, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no additional callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, is there anyone in the room wishing to testify in neutral on AB 146?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Jake Tibbetts. I'm the Natural Resources Manager for Eureka County, and it's nice to be here in person today. I will note that Eureka County, we did register in opposition, but we've moved to neutral based on the conceptual amendment that was presented today. We want to go on record and thank the sponsor, Assemblywoman Peters, for working so hard on this bill to find common ground. One thing we want to note for the committee, it's probably worth framing the intent or the extent of what constitutes the public's right to clean water, and whether this would apply to background natural constituents that aren't considered man-made pollutants, and how that would apply. We note that Eureka County supports the current non-point source pollution program that's administered through NDEP, and that's done through a cooperative federalism approach under the Clean Water Act Section 319 program. We believe an approach to address any diffuse sources of pollution is best done by adequately funding incentive-based and voluntary measures such as the 319 program. Eureka County has been a sub-grantee on 2 different 319 projects, and we've helped assist water quality improvement with landowners in this collaborative incentive-based way, and we think that's the best approach moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Anyone else in the room wishing to testify?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Justin Harrison, representing Clark County, here today in neutral on Assembly Bill 146. Briefly, would just like to thank Assemblywoman Peters for working so closely with stakeholders on in the other house. We did have issues initially upon first draft, but want to thank her again for working with stakeholders to bring us to the neutral position, and happy to answer any questions the community may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Anyone else? All right, BPS, let's go ahead and please proceed to anyone on the line wishing to testify in neutral on AB 146.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 146, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 294, please press star 6 to unmute. Thank you, caller. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Chairman Donate and members of the committee, for the record, Callie Wilsey with the City of Reno. That's CALLIWIL, S as in Sam, EY. We are here in the neutral position this afternoon on AB 146. Allison McCormick also asked me to put the City of Sparks on the record today along with Reno. We want to thank Assemblywoman Peters for bringing forward her amendment today. While you saw in Nellis several amendments proposed by the Urban Consortium, which we are members of, those were presented as part of ongoing conversations in the last week. The bill sponsor's version presented today removes our opposition, and we are very appreciative of her taking the time to meet with us and understanding our concerns. Oftentimes, local governments are faced with implementation of certain regulations, and at the statutory level, it's unclear what these regulations may end up being and what those costs could be. We appreciate the sponsor including that these factors must be a part of the conversation when considering these regulations at the appropriate time through a public hearing process. We also appreciate the changes in sections 4 and 6 that allow rather than require the adoption of these regulations to allow the state to bring forward those regulations that are needed when appropriate and have an opportunity to identify where gaps exist. We support the concept of creating a technical advisory committee with municipality involvement as well. In addition to our appreciation for Assemblywoman Peters in this process, we'd like to thank the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection for meeting with us, shedding light on their regulatory process, and inviting us into that process. We are supportive of and committed to water quality improvement efforts and look forward to working with Assemblywoman Peters and NDEP on these ongoing and critically important efforts in our community. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 864. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Yes, thank you. This is Nina Laxalt, NEENALAXALT. Today, on behalf of Nevada Cattlemen's Association Central Nevada Regional Water Authority, and Humboldt River Basin Water Authority. And first thing I'd like to say is the common theme in all the testimony heard today is how hard the sponsor worked to reach out to all the stakeholders and all the people that were impacted. And we would like to really extend our appreciation to her for that. We all were originally opposed to this bill, and because of her hard work, we are now neutral. Thank you very much.
Caller with the last three digits, 349. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
For the record, my name is Doug Busselman, D-O-U-G-B-U-S-S-E-L-M-A-N. I'm the Executive Vice President of Nevada Farm Bureau. We are testifying today in neutral on AB 146. We also testified in neutral in the Assembly Committee after working extensively with Assemblywoman Peters to address our specific concerns from the original bill. We want to thank Assemblywoman Peters for her willingness then, as well as for the additional points that she is bringing forward now to improve the language resolving other points of contention. Nevada Farm Bureau has strong policy in favor of dealing with diffuse, or in our terms, non-point source impairments of water quality with voluntary, incentive-based best management practices. We believe these priorities have been incorporated into where we are today. Thank you for this opportunity to share our perspective.
Caller with the last three digits, 232. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Dave Dazlich, D-A-Z-L-I-C-H, Director of Government Affairs for the Vegas Chamber. I'd like to echo some of the comments of those going before me in neutral. Would certainly like to thank the sponsor for all the stakeholder engagement to date, and we're happy to move to neutral on this bill. Thank you.
As a reminder, we are currently in neutral testimony on Assembly Bill 146. If you have recently joined the call and would like to testify in neutral, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no additional callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you so much, BPS. I think we have Ms. Carr from NDEP. Do you want to do a testimony in neutral, or are you good?
Thank you, Chairman Donate. Yes, I would like to provide neutral testimony. Thank you.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So good afternoon. Again, Jennifer Carr for the record. I am a Deputy Administrator, as I said earlier, for the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection, and we are testifying in neutral on AB 146. As introduced, AB 146 directed changes to several of NDEP's water quality programs. NDEP identified concerns with the original bill, and we appreciated the Assemblywoman's work to resolve many of those items. I would further state that resolution of certain items in the original bill also permitted us to remove our original fiscal note, as we believe AB 146 in its first reprint can be implemented with existing NDEP resources. Section 1.5 of AB 146 will build upon NDEP's existing diffuse source pollution program by improving the information utilized by that program. The bill will work hand in hand with existing state law and U.S. EPA program funding that we receive at approximately $100 million a year. We're pleased to be able to leverage that federal funding at a rate of over 2 times the amount we receive annually from the U.S. EPA, and this goes to important stream protection restoration projects. Additionally, upon review of the original bill, NDEP had concerns related to managing domestic wastewater, such as the use of septic systems or municipal wastewater treatment plants that are inherently discharging contaminated fluids, which also relates to the language of Section 6. As we discussed, the language of Sections 4.1d and the new subsection 2 in the first reprint work together to strike a balance in guiding NDEP's required future effort to craft a program that will protect public health through drinking water and regulating those supplies. NEP has an existing wellhead protection program that's required under our federal delegation of the Safe Drinking Water Act and is funded by the US EPA. This program has developed over time to encompass community water resource protection at the watershed and county scale and addresses many types of potential contaminant sources. NDP's drinking water program staff will take the lead on forming a broad group of stakeholders, including members of the urban consortium that you've heard from today, to develop the wellhead protection regulations required by the first reprint of the bill. The intent of including useful tools for local community planning efforts aimed at protecting the quality of their source waters for potential contaminants will be the focus of rulemaking and the work group. Because commercial septic systems are regulated by NDP and residential septic systems are regulated by the Department of Human Health under NRS 444, as I noted, any work related to specifically septic systems will be a collaborative effort across departments, as well as the Environmental Commission and the State Board of Health. Finally, NDP appreciates the inclusion of a definition for underserved communities in Section 4.7, as it will pertain to NDP's future adoption of regulations under Section 4.4 for standards of water quality and effluent limitations, where such underserved communities could experience disproportionate impacts by those standards in respective river basins where the underserved community exists. However, the idea of what constitutes a disproportionate impact is still elusive. NDP seeks more specificity on such terms to set clear expectations and resource needs for program implementation. Thanks for your time, and as always, I'm happy to answer questions you may have about NDP's water quality programs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Assemblywoman Peters, any closing remarks? Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Assemblywoman Peters, for the record. I never thought I'd carry around a briefcase as much as I do in this building. I would just like to extend a thanks to the stakeholders, bringing together all of the folks who are involved in non-point source management and groundwater infiltration and treatment of water in this state during a pandemic was quite the feat. And we managed to do it. It took us 2 houses and nearly 2 house passages to get there. But I feel pretty confident that we're all on the same page about the requirements and understanding of the bill and the purpose of this bill. I did want to clarify that this bill is not intended to change the way we do things directly today. I think we have a pretty substantive management practice of water standards as they occur in our modern times. However, we are a water limited state. If we don't take care of that water, it is going to be more expensive to treat in the long run. And we know that the people who pay for the treatment through these water districts are the taxpayers of the state of Nevada. So the more we do today to ensure that what we're doing meets the highest standards of treatment of water, the better off we will be as a state in the long run. I want to thank the committee for hearing this bill today and appreciate your time through this extensive testimony, but I'm grateful for everybody who was able to get on and speak to their position on the bill. Thank you.
Thank you much. Thank you so much, Assemblywoman. I'll go ahead and close the hearing on AB 146. And again, the committee will not be taking any action today, but I may bring it back for a future work session. Let's go ahead and continue with our last item or last bill. We have Assembly Bill 148. So I'll go ahead and open the hearing on AB 148. This measure revises provisions governing mining. Assemblywoman Peters, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Donate. And members of the Subcommittee on Natural Resources, or on the Senate Committee on Natural Resources. For the record, I am Sarah Peters, representing Assembly District 24 in Washoe County. It's my pleasure to present Assembly Bill 148 today, which revises provisions governing permits to engage in exploration projects and mining operations. This is known as the Bad Actor Law. The United States economy highly depends on minerals for producing everything from housing materials to electric vehicles. Nevada is the top mineral producing state in the United States. And mining contributed $11.2 billion to Nevada's economy in 2019. However, along with the opportunity to access Nevada's valuable mineral resources comes the responsibility for mining operators to properly remediate and reclaim their mining operations. Minerals are finite resources, and at the end of a mining operation, it becomes crucial to reclaim the site to ensure that it is safe, stable, and does not negatively impact our water resources or the surrounding environment. In order to protect the environment and to ensure that the state does not have to pay the cost for reclaiming mines, under current law, a mining operator must submit to the state a bond to pay for these reclamation efforts before it can start mining. Assembly Bill 148 seeks to further protect Nevada by making it harder for bad actors to that have previously defaulted on such bonds to participate in exploration or mining operations. AB 146 prohibits the issuance of an exploration or mining permit to any applicant that is in default on any obligation relating to reclamation. However, the bill authorizes the issuance of such a permit if the applicant pays the full amount of the defaulted obligation and demonstrates that the conditions which led to the default have been remedied or no longer exist. The bill requires an applicant for such a permit who is a corporation or business entity to submit with the application the name and address of each person who has a controlling interest in the corporation or business entity. The bill further requires an applicant to submit an affidavit that states whether or not the applicant and each person who has controlling interest in the corporation or business entity is in good standing with all agencies of other states and federal agencies in relation to exploration projects or mining operations outside of Nevada. Lastly, the bill further prohibits the issuance of a permit if the applicant is not in good standing with an agency of another state or a federal agency in relation to an exploration project or mining operation. Good standing here may sound like a vague term. However, it has important implications. In the case of an exploration or mining project, there can be a variety of permits and regulatory agencies that require compliance. These areas can be in water use and management, air pollution, wildlife protection through industrial pond permits, and a variety of others depending on the operation. Each of these permits have obligations and are essentially contracts for the operator in a certain manner, or for operating in a certain manner. A violation of the permit terms would mean to be outside of good standing. However, I have not come across a modern regulatory agency who doesn't work with the permittee on work plans to attain compliance when violations have occurred. I will use Jarrett Canyon as an example. Jarrett Canyon is a processing facility in Nevada that has been cited out of compliance for its air quality permits for years. The agency had continued to try to work with them throughout this time period and ultimately had to make the decision to shut the operation down in order to force the company to adopt mitigations and best practices that would result in compliance with its permit. I believe the determination of in good standing should be developed through the regulatory development process that requires public hearings and requires consideration of impacts to small businesses, among other things. Our Environmental Protection Division has the expertise and know-how to define the terms of what in good standing means in relation to a variety of permits related to the industry. Although I know some stakeholders would like definitive language in the statute, potentially defining timelines and narrowing the definition. However, I believe in this case that our body should leave those determinations to the experts and allow for the robust public input regulatory process to develop out the specifics of the issue. Thank you for the opportunity to present AB 148. I'm open for questions.
Thank you so much, Assemblywoman. Committee members, do we have questions? Senator Goycochea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Assemblywoman, I guess I'm kind of piqued by if you have to be in good standing in other states and how you'd actually be able to research that. Again, some of these companies are widespread, and exactly how are you going to accomplish that, or how would the division find out if they were in fact in default in another area?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. Assemblywoman Peters, for the record, we went over this in the first revisions to the bill and determined that an affidavit process was the most comprehensive way of doing this without putting the artists on the state of Nevada to research and review every person who is involved in a company. It can be up to the company to sign an affidavit saying whether or not they or their, the people who are involved in their company have met the good standing terms or violated the good standing terms on any of their permits across the country. And we expect this to be in good faith, right, without malice or without don't know the legal terms of it necessarily, but without willfully leaving things out, right? And if those, if they do end up leaving those things out, I believe there are provisions in the bill that they can, the permit can be revoked.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Goicoechea. Senator Hansen.
Thanks, Chair. Bad actors in Nevada. When was the last time we had a case like this where a company abandoned a mine and declared bankruptcy or whatever and walked away and it wasn't bonded and protected?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. Assemblywoman Peters, for the record. So this is not a consistent issue that we see today. However, in neighboring states, we have seen cases taken up in, I was researching today as recently as 2018, where they had a company come in with a player who had been a bad actor in a devastating reclamation issue at the cost of like $70 million to the state. Now, we have in the state of Nevada a robust policy around the reclamation bonding, right? So we don't come across this issue as frequently as we would if we did not have that. However, the reciprocity piece allows us to ensure that we are protecting our resources from people who are known to abuse them in other states.
But if they abuse them in other states, they're going to have a hard time getting bonded to do anything in Nevada. I mean, that's one of the purposes of private bonds, is that they're not going to be stupid and allow somebody to be bonded who have defaulted in other states. So I'm just kind of wondering, it seems like we're doing something based on perhaps bad policies in other states, but Nevada, as far as I know, has been super aggressive about this type of stuff for decades. And I can't think of a single case in the whole time I've been in the legislature, at least, and in the last maybe 20 years, where there's actually been a mining company that abandoned a project through bankruptcy or whatever. And even if they did, they had to have bonds in place to protect the Nevadans who would be left on the hook.
Thank you for the comment. Sarah Peters, for the record. It wasn't that long ago that our reclamation bonding mechanisms were not covering the cost of reclamation for the sites that were being abandoned. And that has resulted in an increased robustness of that program. And I think that this piece of legislation adds a protective layer to that, ensuring that we are doing our due diligence, right, as a state, not relying on banks or bonding reviews to tell us whether or not a company is a good actor and should be allowed to participate in the natural resource use of our state. Again, this is a bill that's not trying to affect something that is occurring today, but is again a proactive way that we can protect our limited natural resources that are the backbone of what makes Nevada tick.
Well, I got it. I'm concerned it might be a duplication of efforts that are already in place now. Like you said, there haven't been any cases in quite a while. The bonding program that currently exists was upgraded not all that long ago. So the idea that we could have bad actors showing up under current policy seems really remote to me, but appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hansen. Any other questions? Senator Goicoechea.
As I read the bill, and I want to make sure I understand it, but this does allow for you to cure, if you had a site that you didn't remediate or there was a problem with it, that person or that corporation can in fact cure it, the way I read the bill.
Absolutely, and this kind of follows the standards that have been set in Montana for what the expectations are of meeting the reclamation obligation after a default. And that is to ensure that that default has been paid off, right? That the reclamation isn't remaining a remaining financial obligation to the state that they left it in, and that they showed that the issues that had occurred resulting in the default have been remedied so that they're not bringing the same issues to the state of Nevada.
That brings to mind, then, it's a possibility then if they had a site in another state and that we were aware of, then you could in fact fail to issue them a permit in this state. Maybe they did have a good property until they cured in an adjacent state. So maybe there's a benefit to that for some of these other states as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? I think we're good for now. let's go ahead and proceed to testimony at this time. We'll go first to, as a reminder, again, we'll be limiting to all testifiers to 2 minutes each. I don't think we have anyone in the room to testify in support, so let's go ahead to the phone lines. BPS, is there anyone wishing to provide support testimony for AB 148?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support on Assembly Bill 148, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 130, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Christine Saunders. That's CHRISTINE and I'm the Policy Director with the Progressive Leadership Alliance in Nevada, here in support of Assembly Bill 148. AB 148 will help ensure accountability for mine corporations by holding the individuals responsible for contamination from operating any mines in the state until sufficient remediation occurs. Similar legislation recently passed in Colorado, and Montana has had this in place since 1989. The most well-known application of this law was in response to a company called Pegasus Gold, who in 1998 went bankrupt, leaving Montana saddled with over $35 million in cleanup costs for abandoned pollution. These mines polluted surrounding waterways with cyanide, arsenic, and other contaminants, prompting water treatment measures that may be needed permanently. Mining contamination has long-term impacts to the health of Nevadans, particularly women's reproductive health. When we cannot hold mining bad actors accountable, it is public funding that is required to clean them up. This is a common sense policy which will only impact bad actors who disregard their legal obligations, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 155. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Christy Cabrera, CHRISTICABRERA, and I'm the Policy and Advocacy Director for the Nevada Conservation League, here in support of AB 148. Mining operations have significant and long-lasting impacts to our lands, water, and environment. It is crucial that mining companies fully reclaim the land and environmental damages they have caused after operations have ceased. If they don't, they should be prevented from damaging our environment further. AB 148 will protect Nevada's environment and taxpayers from future degradation and expensive reclamation by holding bad actors accountable. We urge the committee's support. Thank you for your time.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 564. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last 3 digits, 564. You are unmuted. Please proceed with your testimony.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Chelsea Hand. I'm the Outreach and Program Coordinator for Great Basin Resource Watch, testifying in support of AB 148. GBRW is a Reno-based nonprofit public interest organization who's monitored mining and extractive industries primarily in Nevada since 1995. We support communities protecting their air, land, water, and culture from the adverse effects of mining. Modern mining is generally a very destructive activity to the environment, which means that the permitting process needs to be done carefully and judiciously. One of the most important aspects of the permitting process is the plan for reclaiming the area so that one day it can be returned to post-mining use. There are good examples of reclamation in Nevada, and there have been mines that have been abandoned or poorly run and leaving behind a mess for the public to pay for and try to clean up. Reclamation is best when done concurrently with active mining, and better results are obtained when the operator has been responsible in the operation of the mine and not in violation of our environmental standards. AB 148 complements our existing regulations to decrease the number of mines that will be poorly run by identifying what are called bad actors. GBRW supports that a company needs to be in good standing in both reclamation and other mining regulations in order to cite a new mining operation or permit the expansion of an existing operation. Further, we strongly support the amended language that the company must be in good standing with all agencies of other states and federal agencies in relation to exploration projects outside of this state. Keeping bad actors from operating mines in Nevada with AB 148 would provide a highly useful mechanism for helping to ensure that mining projects are as accountable as possible to the lands and ecosystems they are extracting from in our state. Thank you so much for your time.
As a reminder, we are currently in support testimony on Assembly Bill 148. If you have recently joined the call and would like to testify in support, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no additional callers in support at this time.
Thank you so much, BPS. Let's go ahead and proceed to opposition. Is there anyone on the Zoom wishing to testify in opposition? Mr. Gray, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chairman Donate and members of the Senate Committee on Natural Resources. My name is Tyree Gray, Tyregray, and I'm the president of the Nevada Mining Association, representing 400 members that make up Nevada's modern mining supply chain. Nevada's mining industry believes that there is value in making it known that the world that Nevada is closed to bad actors. In fact, Nevada has spent the better part of the last 5 decades developing the world's leading regulatory structure to protect against just that. And right here, I actually have a document, a chart that would show you that, but unfortunately, I couldn't be in there with you today. Yet, as Assemblywoman Peters stated on March 17th before the Assembly Natural Resources Committee, we don't want good actors to be punished for bad actors, and if we can help it. And it is the opinion of Nevada's mining industry that we can help it by doing what Mr. Lobato asked for from NDEP, which is to provide specific definitions of who is liable under the statute and what violations rise to disqualification. Colorado and Montana are the 2 only other states that have taken up legislation similar to AB 148. These states limited the applicability of their legislation only to reclamation and specified that the triggering events are either 1, revocation or suspension of a permit, or 2, forfeiture of a reclamation bond. We believe that AB 148 should be similarly limited in order to actually get at those potential bad actors. Though not in the record today, out of respect for the conversations that we've had with Assemblywoman Peters, we have shared with her an amendment that meets those aims advanced by the sponsors. Number 1, to protect Nevada from bad actors, and number 2, to protect good actors from liability. Nevada's mining industry is committed to working with the sponsors and hope to have the opportunity to amend this bill so that we can all stand together and send a clear message around the world. Nevada supports responsible mining, but will not tolerate bad actors. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gray. Any questions from the committee members? We're good to proceed? All right. BPS, is there anyone else wishing to provide testimony in opposition to this bill?
Thank you, Chair. If you would to testify in opposition on Assembly Bill 148, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 232, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is David Dazlich, D-A-Z-L-I-C-H. I'm the Director of Government Affairs with the Vegas Chamber. We're here today in opposition, but we would like to echo the sentiments of our colleagues from the Mining Association. While mining is a key industry in Nevada, making regulation, specifically well-promulgated regulation, extremely necessary, we absolutely do not want to be hurting the good actors while we are keeping the bad actors out of Nevada. We would also agree with recommended definitions from NDEP, and while we are in opposition at this time, we would hope to see further amendments and look forward to continuing to work with the sponsor. Thank you.
As a reminder, we are currently in opposition testimony on Assembly Bill 148. If you would have recently joined the call and would like to testify in opposition, Please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no additional callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much, BPS. Is there anyone on Zoom wishing to provide testimony in neutral on this bill? I think we have Mr. Lovato, if you want to please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Donate, members of the committee. Greg Lovato, Administrator of the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection, testifying neutral on AB 148. NDP also appreciates the intent of the bill to prevent issuance of mine reclamation permit to any person who has defaulted on reclamation obligations. Several of our implementation concerns were resolved by the amendments reflected in reprint 1 dated April 16. However, NDEP still has some remaining concerns related to a lack of what we view as critical definitions in the proposed bill. So it's very important to make sure we have specifically defined who would be subject to the prohibition on issuance of a permit. In both Section 1, Subsection 5, and Section 2, Subsection 5 of the first reprint, those would prohibit NDEP from issuing a reclamation permit to a company with a, quote, person that has a controlling interest, unquote. And that phrase also incorporates other entities, including, quote, principal officer, partner, director, or trustee of a corporation or business entity, unquote. However, the bill language does not further define any of those terms or reference other sections of the NRS that specifically define those terms. NDP is concerned that without more precisely defining those terms, that NDP and others will be unable to determine whether all of these persons will be appropriately and consistently identified. Finally, as Assemblywoman Peters noted, NDEP will be able to rely on affidavits rather than performing background searches. Thus, we have not identified a fiscal impact. We are available to continue discussions to clarify bill language to address our concerns, and I'm available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It looks like we have a question from Senator Goycochea.
Yes, for Greg Lovato. If this bill would have been in place 10 years ago, Greg, how many projects do you think would have been suspended or held up?
Thank you, Senator Goycochea. Greg Lovato for the record. So we often get asked the question, do you ever deny permits? I mean, people want to know if we actually say no. Generally what happens is if someone's applying and their application is incomplete, or we keep asking them questions and they're unable to resolve them, eventually they withdraw their application or don't complete it. And then, so we never actually formally denied their permit, but effectively their application was denied. So, amongst, all the folks who come in our door, we have, dozens, if not hundreds over the years. It may have discouraged some from applying, but I can't really give you a number if that makes sense.
Yes, I appreciate that. And of course, clearly over the last 10 years, there have been some projects, and I go to Ray Gold and trying to remember Enar Erickson's operation out there in central Nevada, that actually have cost the state some money, or at least went back to the reclamation bonds. So I do appreciate that. There have been some bad actors or some mining projects that did fail. So thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. I don't see any other questions, so let's please proceed. BPS, is there anyone else wishing to testify in neutral on this bill?
Thank you, Chair. To testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 148, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Thank you so much. And Assemblywoman Peters, closing remarks.
Please, thank you, Assemblywoman Peters, for the record. I really appreciate you guys sitting through all of this with me tonight. I know I was maybe a little ambitious in taking on mining and water in the same session, but I feel like it's been a good effort, and folks have come in from the woodwork, really, stakeholders who wouldn't necessarily show up at this venue to talk about these important issues for the state of Nevada. In this particular case, I just want to respond a little bit to the Nevada Mining Association's comments comments, we have been working together. They provided me with an amendment on Saturday that I am working through with legal. There are some pieces of that I am amicable to that would resolve NDEP's concerns regarding those, the definitions of who would be subject to the revocation or denial of a permit. So that is a pending amendment that I hope to get to you in the near future. So with that, I would also just really quickly like to extend my broadest appreciation for our staff for helping me get through the legalese and the definitions within these two bills, but primarily this bill. I could not have done it without them. They are amazing, and I just wanted to extend that thanks to them.
Thank you so much, Assemblywoman. And I think we're good for now to go ahead and, so I'll go ahead and close the hearing on this bill. And again, we won't be taking any actions today, but we may bring it back for your future work session. So thank you so much, Assemblywoman Peters, for joining us today, and always appreciate you. So thank you. Let's go ahead and before we close out, go to public comment. I'll go ahead and call for public comment, and please remember to limit your remarks to 2 minutes each. Is there anyone on the lines that would like to provide public comment at this time?
Thank you, Chair. We are currently on public comment. If you have joined the call and would like to provide public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you so much, BPS. Members, any comments before we adjourn? Seeing none, our next meeting will be Thursday, May 6th at 3:30 p.m., and this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.